As the man had said, they quickly went about moving Delius to a more hardened, secured facility, with Asua and many other of the scientists that were working there alongside Delius being transferred right along with him. This process only took a day or so, after which Asua set about trying to teach Delius as much as she could about interplanetary politics, culture, and ideas about all of the different worlds that orbited the core planet of Hagara, so that he might understand their points of view, doing her best to get him ready for the summit before it arrived. Meanwhile, the tests and studies continued as always, with the only reasonable new development being that they had actually discovered that the energy that Delius produced seemed to be growing rather than diminishing or remaining the same. After a conversation with Asa, they were going with the theory that the energy that his body produced was normally being used to basically simply sustain his existence while he was on Hagara. The intense gravitational forces, heat, and energy emitted by the world, and being on its surface, were intense, enormous in fact, and that a large majority of the energy that his body produced went to sustaining itself, ensuring that his body didn't crumble or wither under the intense forces that the planet produces. But outside of that environment, in a much more stable and habitable place, the energy that would be going to preserving his life was now simply beginning to build. In fact, the running hypothesis was that Delius was not at his limit of strength just yet. They had no idea when this buildup of strength and ability would cease, but it was clear that it was still developing, growing, and that as time continued to pass and he remained off-world, he would only get stronger, perhaps even develop new abilities. However, they couldn't be sure of what those abilities were or how they would develop. But it would be impressive, regardless, as the energy that Delius was now off-putting was more than 3 times what it was when he first arrived. Asa and a few other scientists were present at this point in time, as they were explaining this to Delius, and he sat back, mostly listening out of a mixture of curiosity and general compassion for the idealistic views of his scientific friends, as they were much more excited to talk about it than he was. Truthfully, most of the time, he could hardly keep up with what they were talking about, not really being able to understand the most of it, simply humoring them. He knew that they enjoyed talking about it, and he enjoyed them being happy, doing what they loved to do. So even when he didn't understand what they were really talking about, he smiled and accepted it all the same. It was during this discussion that once again a military-looking individual entered the room, the same one that had given him his last visit, telling him about the summit, and that they had requested that he appear as the representative for Hagara in the interplanetary meeting. "Hello, Delius. How are you feeling today?" "Well, I'm feeling pretty good, I suppose. I was just having a little chat with Asa about some of their latest discoveries, I suppose you could say." "Yes, we've been briefed on them. Our scientists have been hard at work and doing their jobs wonderfully. Their research is making dramatic strides, the likes of which we never assumed would be possible. You're all to be commended on your work," the man said pleasantly. as he seemed to be in a genuinely good mood for whatever the reason be. But that aside, I've come here to inform you that the meeting has been called off. There will no longer be a summit of the worlds. What? Asa said, looking shocked. That meeting was an exceptionally big deal. Delius has been preparing for it for nearly 2 months, and it's just called off? Why? Well, that's actually the good news, the military individual said. After seeing Delius's display, the Virulin, the neighboring planet that we're in dispute with, the ones building the superweapon, have decided that the odds are no longer in their favor. They've already given us the location of the weapon, and our soldiers are on the way to dismantle it. Well, what you might call a rapid dismantling. AKA, we're blowing that damn thing to hell. Its location has already been verified, and their military units are clearing the path for us. They've given up. They no longer believe they have what it takes to go head-to-head with a god. And so, war is over. In a single stroke, Delius won it. With no more conflict hanging overhead, the summit has been cancelled. Congratulations, Delius. You have successfully achieved your mission. And now, you can go home. For a moment, Delius looked shocked. You're kidding me, right? He said, raising an eyebrow at the situation. No, not at all, Delius. You've done us a great service. There's no telling how many lives would have been lost in this war, had things actually escalated to full war. But with you as an ace in our pocket, they don't want to fight anymore. So you can go back home. But don't worry. If things ever begin to escalate again, we'll be sure to call you. Now that we have the technology to communicate with you mastered, and everything seems to be moving along quickly, we can now transport you to and from your world anytime we want. And since you've already mastered being able to move in and out of our frame rate of time, next time there won't be any downtime when we transport you from your world. And with a god on speed dial, any future conflicts are, well, going to be fairly easy to waylay. In fact, there's actually planning, at this point in time, an interplanetary call system. Basically, the idea is to make you and the people of Hagara in general an interplanetary war deterrent. Basically, none of the worlds will be able to take violent action against any of the others. If they do, then an interplanetary council is called, and if it's decided that the war is without true foundation or justice, an unnecessary conflict, then we can just teleport one of you guys up here. For the time being, it's going to be you, but you're basically going to be the ace in the hole for peace. Anytime some planet gets a little bit too trigger happy, we call you in. And with you backing us, no one's going to decide that war is the direction that they need to travel in. So basically, you didn't just end our war. You ended all interplanetary dispute between the worlds within this system. And the Virans have even agreed to start working with us on other solutions to the problem of the awakening of Hagara. So, as I said before, you're free to go home, Delius. Your job's done. In the moment, Delius couldn't believe it. After all of the time that he had spent, all of the effort that he had put into adapting to this frame rate of time and all of the events that were unfolding, it all just ended. It was over. And finally, he could go home. And the looks of astonishment were unanimous throughout the room, as Asa and the other scientists couldn't believe what they were hearing. And for a moment, Asa turned to Delius, looking at him with an expression that almost seemed sad. In the moment, Delius surmised that Asa was sad that she would no longer be able to see her friend, because very soon he was going home.